Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today's story starts last weekend at the Ohio Civil War Collector Show in Mansfield, Ohio. I talked about it in one episode last week, and it is a great place to go if you are a collector looking for relics of all kinds, from uniforms to weapons to Civil War photographs. I came back with a few additions to my collection, including this photograph here, which I was attracted to immediately. And I'll tell you why. I'm a sucker for outdoor images and cartes de visite, and this one has it all. You've got a group of military men sitting in front of what appears to be a balcony on some type of building, perhaps a hotel. And then some of the ladies are apparently visiting these military men. Pretty easy for me to find out. There was a note that was included with the photograph that gave me the location, which was Carlisle Barracks, and the name of the individual in the middle, George Stoneman. He's seated here with the longish beard. His coat is open, showing his white shirt beneath. And so I was quite intrigued and interested to find out more. Any student of the Civil War is aware of George Stoneman and all of the raids he did in the South towards the later part of the war. I must confess, I don't know all that much about his career. However, I was eager to learn. So the first thing I did when I went back home was to start to do some research, and I discovered a similar image to this one in the Library of Congress. It shows some of the same members of this group sitting in front of another building, and all of this confirms that it was made at Carlisle Barracks, and the photographer was Charles Lockman, who is from nearby Carlisle and is well known for his stereo cards and other images from the Civil War period. So I felt comfortable in being able to associate this image with Carlisle Barracks and with Stoneman. And I've got an image here to give you a sense of what Stoneman looks like. This portrait is from the National Archives, and you can see that long beard, that chiseled face, those chiseled features that Stoneman has. So I'm feeling pretty good that I've got Stoneman here at Carlisle Barracks. And a quick look at Stoneman's career tells me that he was at Carlisle Barracks in April and early May of 1861. So that is a pretty early time period. Stoneman here is a captain. He's a future general. And so I began to do some research so I could pinpoint the dates during which he was at Carlisle Barracks. So what I discovered was quite surprising, unexpected, definitely a journey down the research rabbit hole, an unexpectedly great journey down the research rabbit hole. So keep in mind that this image was made sometime between April and May of 1861. 2 months earlier, in February of 1861, Stoneman and his command, which was Company E of the 2nd U.S. Cavalry, were way out in the Texas frontier. So early in the month, the commander of the Department of Texas resigned his commission and surrendered the entire department, all of the military men, all of the supplies, all of the U.S. supplies that were there. His name is David Twiggs. He's from Georgia, and he is going over to the Confederacy. Surrenders his entire military department. Stoneman gets word of this surrender, and he's not having anything. He's not having any of it. And he's not alone. There's a number of other U.S. soldiers who are not going to obey their general's command. They're not going to obey Twiggs. So they decide that they're getting out of Texas. So he and about 45 Stoneman, I should say, and about 45 of his troopers, along with 6 companies from other cavalry and infantry regiments, a total of 417 men, escape from the interior of Texas in the frontier, make it all the way to Cavallo Pass, which is located along the Gulf Coast of Texas, and they manage to get to safety. They go on ship all the way around the Gulf of Mexico, up the Atlantic coast. They land in New York, and there they are awaiting orders. 231 of those 417 men are ordered to, guess where? Carlisle Barracks in Pennsylvania. One of those 231 men is George Stoneman. Oh, and by the way, the commander of this detachment of 231 regulars is another name that you might know, George H. Thomas, who also becomes a general and, of course, is known to students of the war as the Rock of Chickamauga for his heroic resistance of the attack on that place in 1863. I went into newspapers.com and found this fantastic description of the journey of Stoneman and the men, the regulars from Texas to Carlisle Barracks. And their arrival, by the way, at Carlisle was April 13th, 1861. So now we have a beginning date, April 13th, 1861. Here's the quote from the local newspaper in Carlisle Barracks. Quote, "They're all well and in good spirits, but weather beaten and travel worn, their bronze faces giving unmistakable evidence of the exposures incident to frontier life. After a weary march from the Texas frontier to the coast, they embarked at Pass Cavallo on the 31st of March, touched at Key West on the 4th instant, landed 2 companies of infantry, and being unable to obtain water, proceeded to Havana, sailed thence on the afternoon of the 5th instant, and arrived at New York on the 11th. They are now encamped in the rear of the barracks, where the tents, the campfires, and the ease with which they adapt themselves to circumstances give us some idea of the realities of a soldier's life." So, what a fascinating story. Sort of the backstory. When you look at this photograph and you see Stoneman surrounded by civilians and fellow officers, everybody is wearing crisp uniforms. The women are dressed nicely. Everyone's looking pretty relaxed. They're posing for this photograph. Know that in the last 2 months, at least Stoneman, I haven't been able to identify the other men except for one, and I'll get to him in just a minute. But Stoneman had just been through this ordeal to escape now secession Texas and get to the United States borders and to safety, this harrowing trip in a very precarious spot. So I want to get to the guy in the front. He is a man who was described as a trader in horses. His name is Thomas Scott Stewart. Hard to pin him down, but he was active in military, business, and political circles. After the war, Ulysses S. Grant nominates him as the consul to Japan. That's in 1868. So Stewart is the man pictured in the front. He's sitting there with the white or light-colored pants on. As for Stoneman, he goes on to have a career as a major general, and after the war becomes the 15th governor of the state of California. So there you have it. Today's episode, Life on the Civil War Research Trail. We'll see you again soon. Until then.